There's a kind of pain that doesn't come from losing. It comes from watching others win early while you're still standing at the start. I remember that phase clearly. People around me were getting results fast, announcements, applause, proof. Things were happening for them while I was still trying to understand if I was even moving in the right direction. They weren't just ahead, they were visible, and I wasn't. I watched them celebrate milestones I hadn't reached. I watched their confidence grow with every small win. I watched how quickly people started believing in them, sometimes after just one success. And quietly, I started questioning myself. What am I doing wrong? Why is this taking me so long? What if slow progress is actually failure in disguise? Those thoughts don't come from jealousy. They come from fear. Fear that you missed your moment. Fear that timing matters more than effort. Fear that maybe you're late, and late means irrelevant. I didn't feel inspired watching others win early. I felt exposed because early success creates contrast. It highlights your lack of results. It makes your work look invisible. It makes your patience look like hesitation. I started feeling embarrassed about my pace, not publicly, internally. I felt like I didn't have anything to show for the time I'd already invested, and that's dangerous. Because when you start measuring your worth by visible wins, slow progress feels like a personal flaw. I wasn't failing dramatically. I just wasn't winning. And not winning early feels worse than losing sometimes because there's no clear lesson, no closure, just waiting. I questioned whether staying made sense, whether effort without early results was irresponsible, whether the world rewards patience at all. It felt like I was betting on a future that might never arrive. I saw people who started after me move ahead faster. I saw people with less experience get recognition earlier, and every comparison chipped away at my confidence. Not loudly, gradually. I started doubting my instincts, my decisions, my timeline. I wondered if I had misread my own ability. Maybe I'm not meant for this. Maybe I should have known sooner. Maybe early winners are the only real winners. That's the lie early success tells you. That if it doesn't happen fast, it won't happen at all. And that lie almost got me. Because early wins don't just bring success, they bring certainty. And certainty is addictive. Watching others feel sure while you're still guessing makes you feel small. I wanted proof, any proof, something to justify staying, but there was nothing. No applause, no momentum, no reassurance, just effort that felt invisible, and invisibility messes with you. It makes you feel like you're working in the wrong direction, like you're investing in something no one else believes in, including yourself. I didn't talk about this much at the time because complaining about slow progress sounds like excuses, so I kept it inside. I showed up, I worked, I smiled, but internally, I was fighting the idea that early success might be the only success that matters. That phase taught me something uncomfortable. Slow beginnings test your identity more than fast failures ever could, because failure at least gives you an answer. Slow progress keeps you suspended in doubt. I didn't know it yet, but that suspension was shaping me. At the time, it just felt like waiting. Waiting while others moved, waiting while the world watched someone else, waiting without knowing if I was being patient or naive. I didn't win early, and in that moment, it felt like a disadvantage. I didn't know yet that not winning early was protecting me from something else, something heavier than failure. But before I understood that, I had to sit with the discomfort of being the one who didn't win first. From the outside, early success looks clean. Fast progress, quick recognition, people believing in you before you even fully believe in yourself. It looks like momentum, like things falling into place exactly how they're supposed to. But that's only the surface. I didn't see it at first because I was too busy wishing I was in their position. I assumed early winners were confident, calm, and certain. That winning early meant security. It doesn't. What it really brings is pressure. Pressure to repeat the win. Pressure to prove it wasn't luck. Pressure to keep the story alive. Early success doesn't let you grow quietly. It puts a spotlight on you before you've built a foundation. Every next move gets watched. Every slowdown feels suspicious. Every mistake feels louder than it should. I noticed how early winners started changing. Not dramatically, thought out subtly. They became careful, protective of their image, afraid of slipping, afraid of being exposed as someone who peaked too soon. Their success stopped feeling like freedom. It felt like something they had to defend. Momentum is fragile when it comes too early. It hasn't been tested yet. There's no history of recovery behind it, no proof that you can lose and rebuild. So every win becomes heavier. I saw people who won early stop experimenting. They stuck to what worked once because it was safer than risking something new. Curiosity gave way to caution, and caution slows growth. They couldn't afford to look like beginners anymore. They couldn't afford visible mistakes. Their learning had to happen privately, or not at all. I realized something important watching this from the outside. Early success doesn't remove fear. It changes its direction. Instead of fearing failure, early winners fear losing status. Instead of worrying about whether they can make it, they worry about whether they can stay. That's a different kind of stress, and it's constant. Because when your identity becomes tied to winning early, slowing down feels like falling behind, even if you're still ahead. I noticed how some early winners burned out, not because they worked too hard, but because they couldn't slow down without feeling like they were failing. Success became something they had to perform, not something they could grow into. From where I stood, still waiting for my first real win, that pressure was invisible. But once I saw it, something shifted in me. I stopped envying their speed. I started respecting my silence. Because while they were managing expectations, I was building tolerance. While they were protecting momentum, I was learning how to exist without it. They had results. I had room. Room to make mistakes without consequences. Room to change direction without explanation. Room to learn in public without judgment. Early winners don't get that luxury. Every stumble is analyzed. Every pause is questioned. Every change feels risky. I also noticed how early success creates a fixed image. People expect you to be the same version forever, the one who wins easily, progresses quickly, stays ahead. But growth doesn't work like that. Growth requires awkward phases, plateaus, periods where nothing looks impressive. Early winners often skip those phases publicly and pay for it later privately. Watching this taught me patience. I realized that not winning early wasn't a punishment, it was protection. Protection from pressure I wasn't ready to carry. Protection from expectations I hadn't earned the strength to handle yet. Protection from being defined before I understood myself. I didn't have to defend anything. I could experiment, I could slow down, I could rebuild without explanation. That freedom mattered. At the time, I didn't feel lucky. I felt late, but late meant invisible, and invisible meant free. Free to learn without performance, free to fail without headlines, free to grow without pressure. I didn't know it then, but not winning early was giving me time. Time to become stable before I became visible. And stability lasts longer than momentum ever will. Losing early doesn't teach you how to win, it teaches you how to stay. When you don't win at the beginning, there's no spotlight waiting for you, no expectations to protect, no image to maintain, just the work and the quiet. At first, that quiet feels like rejection. You wonder if anyone notices what you're doing. You question whether your effort even counts without results to prove it. You feel like you're practicing for a game that might never happen. But slowly, something shifts. When no one is watching, you stop performing. You stop trying to look good. You stop rushing for approval. You start focusing on what actually needs improvement. That's where real learning happens. I failed without an audience. My mistakes weren't highlighted. My missteps weren't judged. I could be wrong without consequence. I could be slow without being labeled. And that freedom mattered more than I realized. Early losses took pressure off my identity. I wasn't the winner, so I didn't have to act like one. I could ask basic questions. I could repeat fundamentals. I could admit confusion. I wasn't protecting a reputation. I was building competence. That difference is huge. When you lose early, your relationship with failure changes. Failure stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like information. There's no status to lose, so mistakes become useful instead of scary. I didn't panic when things didn't work. I adjusted. I didn't overreact to slow progress. I stayed. Staying became my advantage. While others chased momentum, I built routine. While others depended on excitement, I learned how to move without it. While others measured success by outcomes, I measured it by consistency. And consistency is teachable. You don't need talent to repeat a process. You don't need confidence to show up again. You need tolerance. Tolerance for boredom. Tolerance for uncertainty. Tolerance for doing the same thing without immediate payoff. Losing early trained that tolerance. I learned how to show up on ordinary days. Days without inspiration, days without validation, days where progress was invisible but necessary. Those days don't make headlines, they make foundations. I also learned how to recover. Early losses meant I got comfortable restarting. I didn't attach my self-worth to outcomes because there weren't any big outcomes to attach to. So when something didn't work, I didn't spiral. I reset. That ability to reset without drama is rare. Early wins don't teach it. Early losses do. I noticed how my mindset changed over time. I stopped asking, am I winning? And started asking, am I improving? That question is quieter, but more honest. Improvement doesn't require applause. It requires attention, and attention is easier to give when you're not distracted by expectations. Losing early also taught me patience with my own timeline. I stopped comparing my beginning to someone else's middle. I stopped rushing milestones. I stopped needing proof every week that I was on the right path. I trusted the process because I had lived inside it long enough to understand it. By the time small wins started appearing, they didn't feel overwhelming. They felt earned. They didn't make me anxious. They didn't make me reckless. They felt like a natural extension of the work I had already been doing. That's the hidden benefit of losing early. You don't get addicted to winning. You don't depend on praise. You don't confuse momentum with mastery. You learn how to stay when nothing is exciting, which means you're prepared for the long stretch when things actually matter. Early losses didn't slow me down. They stabilized me. They taught me how to exist in the middle without needing reassurance. They taught me how to keep going when the outcome wasn't clear. And that's a skill most people never develop, is because winning early never forces them to. I didn't win early. Instead, I learned how to stay. And staying turned out to be the most important lesson of all. When winning finally started happening, it didn't feel the way I imagined it would. There was no rush, no disbelief, no emotional explosion. It felt calm. That surprised me. I had spent so long imagining that first real win would fix something inside me, and that it would validate the years of slow progress, erase the doubt, and suddenly make everything feel worth it. It didn't do that, and that's how I knew I was ready. Because by the time the wins arrived, I wasn't desperate for them anymore. I had already learned how to function without validation. I had already built routines that didn't depend on results. I had already survived long stretches of effort with nothing to show for it. So when success finally showed up, it didn't shake me. It fit. I noticed how differently I handled it compared to people who won early. I wasn't afraid of losing momentum. I wasn't panicking about the next step. I wasn't obsessed with repeating the win immediately. I stayed grounded. That grounding came from all the time I spent losing quietly. I knew how to slow down without guilt. I knew how to adjust without drama. I knew how to keep working even when the excitement wore off, because I had already done that for years. Winning didn't feel like a finish line. It felt like a checkpoint. And checkpoints don't make you reckless. They remind you to keep going. I also didn't tie my identity to the win. It didn't become proof that I was finally good enough. It was just feedback, positive feedback from a process I trusted. That trust mattered, because when you win before you're ready, success becomes something you cling to. You protect it. You fear losing it. Every small setback feels threatening. I didn't have that fear. I knew how to rebuild. I knew how to exist without winning. So winning wasn't fragile for me. It wasn't something I had to defend. It was something I could grow on top of. I noticed that I didn't over-celebrate either. Not because I wasn't grateful, but because I understood how easily things can change. I respected the moment without letting it define me. That balance only comes from having been on the other side for a long time. Slow beginnings build emotional stability. They teach you patience with progress and restraint with success. They teach you how to separate self-worth from outcomes, whether those outcomes are good or bad. I also realized that the foundation mattered more than the win itself. The habits I built while losing didn't disappear when I started winning. They carried over. I still showed up the same way. I still worked the same way. I still respected the process the same way. That consistency made success sustainable. I wasn't trying to chase the feeling of winning again. I was focused on maintaining the behavior that made improvement possible. That's the difference between winning early and winning when you're ready. Winning early gives you results without resilience. Winning later gives you resilience first and results that last. I didn't feel pressure to prove anything anymore. I didn't need to announce my progress. I didn't feel rushed to capitalize on momentum. I trusted my pace. And that trust didn't come from confidence. It came from experience. Experience of losing without breaking. Experience of staying without certainty. Experience of working without applause. By the time success arrived, I had already learned the hardest lessons. How to keep going. How to stay calm. How to adjust instead of react. Winning didn't teach me those things. Losing did. That's why not winning early saved me. It didn't delay my growth. It prepared me for it.